Hi, everyone. Thank you to those of you that have your cameras on so I can see you. This is a lot different from our normal episodes where we're just staring at each other and a guest. So it's nice to have some other faces to look at. We've never done this before. So, we're learning along the way, and it might be a little weird, but we'll just keep it going. And really, this is for, you to learn from us and us to answer any questions. And before we dive into it, I want to ask the audience who just give a raise of hand if you are either currently enrolled in a boot camp or did a boot camp or thinking about doing a boot camp. So anyone kind of in the boot camp, raise of hands. Okay, we got some people, get some virtual hands in there. And if you're not kind of in the boot camp, go ahead and write in the chat something you're looking to learn from this session. We really want this to be helpful for you, so we're not just kind of like talking at you. I can't even see where Monica is, so this is hilarious. Oh, there you are in the middle. But yeah, okay, great. So I'm glad. So Monica and I did not go to Codesmith. We went to different boot camps that are both not in business anymore, but that doesn't mean they were bad. We had great experiences. So we can kind of talk to the bootcamp experience, maybe not Codesmith specifically, but just how we kind of changed careers into becoming software engineers. So I guess the first thing we're going to do is just kind of introduce ourselves. So I'm Taylor. I am one half of the podcast Imposter. I'm currently a senior iOS engineer at Headspace. And I've been there for almost 3 years. So I work only on the iOS app. So if you have an iPhone and you have the Headspace app, you've likely seen some of my work. You can give me feedback on that in the chat if you want. But yeah, so I've been a software engineer for about 5 years. Prior to that, I never, ever would have thought I would be a software engineer. I had never even heard of software engineering, and the iPhone was not around when I was in school. So I definitely didn't even consider that as a possibility. I thought engineers were like really nerdy, scary guys working in basements with headphones, like hacking into the government, or like stealing my passwords or something. But I always liked computers. I always was playing on the computer, doing, whatever, like playing games and stuff, kind of commandeering my family computer. But I never really thought of that as a career for myself. And mostly I saw men involved in that career as well. So I thought I would be pre-med in college. I quickly realized I didn't even want to deal with blood. I also hate like unpredictable schedules. So it would have been a terrible career for me. And instead of going into med school right after college, I became a teacher. So I did Teach for America. So I was a teacher on the south side of Chicago for 2 years, first grade teacher. And that was the hardest job I know I will ever have in my entire life. So everything from there has been smooth sailing, even engineering. But there I learned a lot about myself and the kind of work that fulfills me and that I really want to be doing on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of gives me energy and what is also draining. And what was draining was like being in front of people, especially like children, all day long and putting on a different personality. So that was a little bit too much for me, but I kind of wanted to stay in the education space and help people. I did love the idea of helping close the achievement gap, especially helping students in underserved areas. So I went to a startup that focused on, built an app for kids in classrooms to help basically target their areas of greatest need. So that was a startup, and it was an iPad app. And that was the first time that I had ever seen engineers. So I saw real engineers for the first time, and I was like, these people are cool. Like they get to build the product, and I'm over here like, I was doing sales. I was doing a bunch of random stuff because it was a startup and they just kind of threw me wherever. I was doing sales for a little bit. I was training teachers for a little bit. And I kept coming back to the fact that I couldn't change the product. I couldn't myself do anything to make the product better. And that was really kind of debilitating for me. And I also felt that in my sales job, like I wasn't that good at it. Number one, I hate asking people for anything. And number two, I just felt like anyone off the street could just do my job. I feel like we were all kind of this cookie cutter version of each other. And I wasn't using my brain in a way that I was used to, and in the math and sciences that I really liked when I was younger. So I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I learned about a boot camp in Chicago. It was called Dev Boot Camp. And I went to an info session panel, much like the one you guys are at right now. And I just heard them talk about their experiences. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And like, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to love this, but I'm just going to take the leap. What do I have to lose? And I did it, and I quit my job, and I did the boot camp for 19 weeks straight. And that was what I was focusing all my energy on. So luckily I came out of that and got an internship. So I had my expectations set at the beginning, like I'm restarting my career. I'm not hoping to get that 6-figure offer right off the bat, which I know Codesmith has a little bit of a different philosophy on that. You guys get typically better offers, but I just wanted a job. So I got an internship at Disney. So I moved back to LA, and I was at Disney for about 2 years. I got hired full-time for my internship. And then basically learned on the job there. Again, just kind of meeting mentors and people that really wanted to help me and kind of stick their neck out for me because they could tell that I was passionate and wanted to learn. So I learned all of iOS, everything I know about iOS at that job. I had never even touched it in my boot camp. And then I got an offer at Headspace 2 years later to come and do iOS full-time as well. So a lot of twists and turns in my story, and I never thought I would be here. And I don't really know where I'm headed to next. And, I'm kind of learning along the way, but I know that software engineering has been a really good career for me, just in terms of a work-life balance. We are able to just do our job. During the day, I'm not kind of burning the midnight oil, trying to get stuff, churn stuff out myself. We have really great work-life balance at Headspace. And I feel really good about the work that I'm able to produce that our users are actually using that, and that helps them and helps their mental health. So that's where I've just been talking for a full 10 minutes, Monica. So that's my story. And then I met Monica at Headspace. So that's how we kind of came together as two female engineers at Headspace, and we've really leaned on each other ever since. So Monica, you wanna kick off your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Just a heads up, my headphones died or disconnected at some point. And despite being an engineer, I don't understand technology enough to know how to make that happen and work on the fly. So if you hear some background noise, it could be my cat or my partner, but this is real life. This is just what we're doing. So similar to Taylor, I also come from a non-traditional engineering background, so not an engineering background. I studied in college. I got my degree in Arabic and Middle East studies and didn't do much with that. I got a job in sales right after I graduated and knew that wasn't what I wanted to do long-term, but I just was desperate to pay some bills and move out of my parents' house. So I did that for a couple of years and then just sort of bopped around to different companies, ended up moving out to LA for another kind of sales adjacent account management role, and just didn't see a lot of opportunities or excitement at what that career path could potentially hold. And at the company I was working for at the time, we actually had a bootcamp grad on the engineering team who had gotten a job at this company, his first job right after graduating, and loved it and had only good things to say. And I hung out with engineers, a few of them, and I was always just really kind of envious of the autonomy that they had in their role. And they would talk about how they were always getting hit up by recruiters, and it was so annoying. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wish someone would, consider me valuable at some point in my career. And so that sort of got the ball rolling. I ended up leaving that job and deciding to pursue going to a boot camp. So I took a few months off just to study, and because I didn't know any coding, again, I didn't have any technical background, math, science, never really my strong suit. But I just started doing some online tutorials and got the books that they recommended. And then I did end up getting accepted to a bootcamp called Maker School. It's now under the Hack Reactor umbrella. And I went there in January of 2016. And right after I graduated, I a friend who was also in the cohort kind of tipped me off that Headspace was looking to hire some interns for the summer. And that had always been sort of my dream, like Cinderella story kind of company. And so I applied for this internship, and I was hired actually along with one other person who had been in my Maker Square cohort. And I never left. I was actually hired to work on the API platform team. And pretty much as soon as I got there, it was obvious that there were more platform engineers than they needed. And there was only one Android engineer. And so he started just kind of sliding me a few of the tasks that he had to work on. And I completed them. And then a couple weeks later, the VP of engineering just asked if I would do Android full time. And I wasn't really in a position to turn that opportunity down. So I accepted. And also, it was new and exciting. I like Codesmith Maker Square is a JavaScript based bootcamp. So I learned Java and the Android framework kind of on the fly. Which was very new to me because I had never really even had an Android phone. I remember within my first couple months, I still had to Google search sort of how to turn it off. And there was a while when I didn't know how to take a screenshot. So I would be taking my iPhone and taking a picture of the screen on the Android phone and trying to pass that off as an actual screenshot, which obviously no one believed. But I did a good enough job for them to keep me around. I converted to full-time after my internship. Since I've been at the company, I've been a part of 2 major rewrites of the entire Android application, which I think have been the 2 biggest and best learning opportunities I could have asked for in my career, just writing a production scale app from scratch. The first time, not so well. The second time, I think we did a really, really good job. And for the past over a year, I've been one of the chapter leads on the Android team. So I'm also involved a lot in sort of planning out our roadmap and always keeping in mind our technical debt and the integrity of the code base. And sort of like Taylor, I'm not really sure which track I want to go down next. I think there comes a time in every senior engineer's life when they sort of choose if they want to explore the management track or if they want to stay more on the individual contributor and work more towards becoming an architect. I think also there are great avenues for engineers to explore product management, and that can be an interesting transition as well. But right now I'm still just kind of learning, and I'm not really sure where I want my career path to take me. I sort of feel like as long as I like my coworkers and I like what I'm doing and I find opportunities to learn every day, then that's sort of like a win all over.
All right. I hope everyone's paying attention because you'll be tested on both of our stories at the end of this. Okay, good. I hope that's like the biggest chunk of us just talking at you. I took the time while Monica was talking because I already know her story to read what you guys were writing. And I'm seeing a lot of themes, a lot of you transitioning into tech, which is a great choice. We both love it, have stuck there. A lot of questions about confidence in interviews or just like building confidence and avoiding imposter syndrome in general. I see a couple Chicago peeps in here. So, hey guys. And a good question about utilizing your previous careers as an asset in your tech careers, which is something we talk about a lot. So I guess to back up a little bit. So we started this podcast called impostHER, a name that Monica came up with after we were kind of talking about imposter syndrome. It's a big topic of conversation amongst women in engineering, I think, especially because we are plagued by it the most. It's just that feeling that like someone's going to figure you out. Like you somehow tricked them in the interview to hire you. And then now that you're on the job, you're like, shoot, like I can't do this. Why did they hire me? They're going to figure out that I'm terrible and I'm going to get fired. And it's definitely not only, doesn't only happen to women, but it happens to people that are not the minority in the group, because you see fewer examples of yourself in your profession, right? So I have more evidence if I'm looking for it to say, okay, people like me don't really succeed in tech. So, if something bad happens one day, or I'm like, I feel like I'm failing, then, oh, maybe it's not for me. Like I just have been tricking everyone. This is not, this is not what I'm meant to do. And I think a lot of people feel this way and don't talk about it because you feel like you're exposing yourself if you reveal that you feel like an imposter. And, we talk about it so often now that I forget it's like a vulnerable thing to admit. But it's what our whole podcast is based on, because there are no examples out there of women or anyone talking about imposter syndrome, like on a daily basis, of how it affects them, and just kind of demystifying it and making it feel, like it's no big deal. Like everyone has these feelings, and kind of take the power away from it a little bit. So when you do have that feeling, you just recognize it and say, oh, okay, just having that moment. I have a lot of evidence behind me that I can do my job. I'm actually great at it. And then you kind of like dispel that in the moment. But I think it comes up for a lot of people. So if you're feeling that way, you're really not alone. And Monica and I are senior software engineers at a large company, and we feel it every day. So I wish I could tell you it gets better, and it does if you really work on it, but it still pops up, just because the nature of tech, things are always changing. It's not like one day you're like, okay, I know everything there is to know, and any ticket that comes my way, boom, done. I know how to do it. That's part of the exciting part of the job, is that you're likely running into things you've never seen before. So it makes every day a little bit different, more interesting. And you're just basically Googling how to figure it out. Like, you just figure it out. That's the whole job. It's just finding the answer. It's not that you have to have it immediately off the top of your head. So I think that helps us. Monica, you have any kind of thoughts about imposter syndrome that I didn't cover?
I can build on some. I love that Josh called out that vulnerability is a strength. I'm also a big Brene Brown fan. And I think if we like look at that in the bigger context, vulnerability, it makes you more approachable. It makes you seem more human. It makes people feel comfortable around you. And that's really like, humans wouldn't be around. We wouldn't have evolved that much if that wasn't the case. Like, the reason that we've been able to survive is our ability to form like tribe and form community. And so I really think that the more that we can kind of like unite around this shared experience, then we're all going to be better off. We might all still have imposter syndrome, but I think we'll all be more okay with it, and we'll just sort of have that awareness going forward. Like, we can understand that we have it, but we don't need to play into every thought that it sort of like sparks in our mind and kind of chase that.
Totally. And for a lot of you that are saying you've been in a career for many, many years, or like more mature stage in your career. I really think, I think every day about the strengths that I have and the skills that I built in those previous careers, that are skills that are not as easy to develop while you're an engineer. Skills like communication, presentation skills. Communication honestly is the big one, and like delegating, and just being able to talk to people and get what you need from them. So when you start out as an engineer, like, you need to be able to ask questions and communicate what you need to people. And if you're scared to do that, then and you try to figure everything out on your own, it's just going to take so much longer. And I think a lot of engineers who have known they wanted to do engineering since they were 10 years old, like rebuilding their computer in the basement, and they study it in college, and they've always just been exposed to this same kind of homogenous group. They don't have those skills very often. And it's way harder to teach those things than the technical skills. I promise you. The people that get fired, I guess this may be kind of a bad thing to say. This is not like sanctioned by Headspace, but in my experience, people that get fired at companies are not the ones that have like poor technical skills. They're the ones that like have been told, okay, hey, I need you to work on this thing. And it's always soft skills related. It'll be like, okay, like, I need you to tone down whatever your communication in meetings, you're like lashing out at people, or your communication is a little harsh. and then they don't change it. Like they don't take the steps to take that feedback seriously and change it, or they really can't take feedback. They have like such an ego that they're like, my technical skills are amazing. And like, you know, you'd be lucky to have me, like all that other stuff doesn't matter. Those are the people that actually get fired from companies. Like that's the most damaging thing. It's never someone who has the best intentions, takes feedback and like takes action to address everything. And maybe has like not the best technical skills, but is proving over and over again that they're willing to learn and like making improvements. You are safe. So that was kind of like a long way of saying that the technical skills are so much easier to build than those skills that you get from, you know, 10 years working or 10 years working in retail where you're like dealing with annoying customers. Guess what? Your annoying customers in tech are going to be your coworkers or actually the customers of your job. So those things are super transferable. And I always think to myself, you know, like maybe I'm not the best technically because I don't have the 25 experience that this guy next to me does because he's been doing it since he's 15, but I have X, Y, and Z that makes me like a better teammate, a better friend, just like a better employee of the company that really cares about our mission. And so those things are not to be taken lightly.
Absolutely. And I saw a bit up here to build on that. I want to make sure it doesn't get lost. Precious asked, how do you sell these skills in tech specifically? And I haven't done a lot of interviews recently because we haven't been hiring on my team, but when I have, it's something that I always look for. So I think, especially when, you know, there's always a technical portion of the interview, that's when your communication really shines. I've passed on candidates who will do a perfect technical implementation, but if they're silent the whole time, I have no idea what's going on in their mind. And if they can't articulate why they're writing that code, like how do I know they didn't just memorize the solution from cracking the coding interview conveniently a couple of days before and they're just sort of like spitting it out. So and alternatively, we've had people who don't, you know, solve the problem 100% perfectly, but because they're able to articulate very well what they're doing, then we can see, you know, okay, your logic is sound. And if your logic is sound, then you have a computer, you can Google up what the actual syntax should be, what the actual, you know, that one error that you made in that one line isn't going to, hopefully, at least in the interviews that I conduct, make or break your interview.
Definitely. I'm just reading some of these questions more about hiring and interviews. And one thing that reminded me of Monica's, one time I completely tanked someone's interview because he like refused to look me in the eye. It was me and like my male counterpart, and he did not look at me once during the interview or direct any questions at me. And I was just like, that's just not gonna fly. Like I don't know what your problem is. But if you cannot be in the same room as me and show respect, then I don't care how good you are. He worked at Instagram or something, you know, it's like, I don't care. Like something is up. So yeah, like those things will tank your interview way more than if you like can't build a linked list, whatever that is. Honestly, I don't even know what these things are anymore. Like I need to go back and read Crack the Coding Interview. I'm so out of practice. But
second that, Taylor, this literally the same thing happened to me. This is when I was still pretty junior in my career. I think it was maybe only 8 months to a year after I started. We had someone who was in an interview. It was me and another male colleague who was at my same level, by the way. He had actually started after me. But he was only making eye contact with the male colleague, and it's awkward. Like you said, you're not gonna like lean over and try to make a big deal out of it, but you notice it, you feel it. It's very uncomfortable for you when, you know, you ask a direct question and that question is blatantly not addressed or addressed back to someone that's not you. And I did bring it up in our debrief, and our VP at the time, his response, this is just kind of like a rant hot take, but I just need to get it out. He said something like, well, maybe he was just intimidated by you. And that's not that's not a me problem. I'm sorry. Thank you, Tiffany. I see you nodding along with me. Thank you. If you're intimidated by me, like that's on you.
Yeah, we're gonna have a tough time working together
every day. So
Yeah.
I'm not the one leaving. And we didn't hire her. So.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. I'm laughing at this question from Ron about how you deal with a candidate that's an actual imposter.
I've had some, honestly, I've had some. There's a Taylor, what's the like not the opposite of imposter syndrome?
It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. That's what it is.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't see who was that? Omri?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the best thing about this was that I sent it to Monica. I was like, "Oh, this is the opposite of imposter syndrome." And Monica's like, "Oh my God, my first thought is, what if I have this too?" Like, you can't have both. You either think you're an imposter or you think you're the queen of the world, but like you cannot be both. LOL, Omri, next podcast, Dunning-Kruger. That's hilarious. I would love to see, I think we have a lot to learn. I feel like we're on an Instagram live, Monica. It's like people are like writing comments and we're just responding. This is fun.
This is the AMA we've always wanted to do.
And I'm like, thanks for the participation. Y'all are like writing so much stuff. I can't even keep up. But honestly, we have a lot to learn from the Dunning-Kruger folks, because like that is the energy that we need to embody. If you're feeling like an imposter, and someone wrote fake it till you make it earlier. Like you just really have to be like, okay, I'm feeling like an imposter, but I just got to keep going. Like I need to just act like I know what I'm doing. Or honestly, better than that, just ask someone. If you are actually lost, don't pretend you know what you're doing for a few days. And your manager comes back to you, is like, hey, like I haven't seen a pull request for a couple of days. Like, what's up? And you say you're stuck. They're like, no, like come to me. They don't want you spinning your wheels for that long. So that is hilarious. Dunning-Kruger. I was going to go into something else, but I got distracted. Yes. Dunning-Kruger. Yeah. Okay. So you got takeaway from this is you cannot have both. You cannot have imposter syndrome and the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you think you have the Dunning-Kruger effect, you don't have it, because these are people that are not self-aware enough to reflect and think they have this. I want to go back to stuff about resumes. I'm seeing like a lot of resume questions, and I'm not sure. I don't know what the Codesmith like answer to this is. So I'm again not a Codesmith representative, but for me, I've never personally gotten a job because I have submitted my resume to like an online portal. Only times that I get jobs are if I directly email like a network, like a friend of a friend or some contact I find, like directly target them and then get them on the phone and talk to them. Or I find a recruiter. So when you're a software engineer, you guys, you'll find that recruiters hit you up all the time, pretty much every day. We get 3 to 5 every single day. So once you're in, you're fine. You'll get jobs. The first job is the tough one. But that's when you're using your network. Use LinkedIn. Make sure your LinkedIn is up to date, has your top line. Someone can look at it and say, oh, okay, this person has done this in the past. They're considering a transition to tech. They've done this boot camp, whatever. Have your kind of mission statement up there, and just make sure that people can use that to learn about you, and then reach out to people there, but in a really personalized way. The thing that bothers me the most is when people say, hey, like, I see you work at Headspace. I'd love to pick your brain. I'm like, okay, you clearly just Googled Headspace employees and sent this to all of us. And then I can see that they're friends with all of my coworkers. And I'm just like, that's not like, I will help you if you have looked at my profile and you say, oh, wow, I noticed you did a boot camp. I'm considering a boot camp. Like, how was that switch? And you ask me the questions in that message, maybe build the rapport, and then maybe build up to that, maybe a 15-minute call or something. Asking someone to commit to a 30-minute phone Zoom call is a lot, especially now, like people are so Zoom fatigued. But doing your research and like only asking people that you've kind of researched and you feel like there could be a connection there. And it's all about like building connections with people, because people want to help you. Like, I want to pay it forward for all the times that people helped me in the past. Because I did not get to where I am on my own. I got to where I am because people took a chance on me, hired me when maybe I didn't have all the qualifications. And so all that is a long way of saying, I don't recommend just blasting a resume out. Resumes are, like a necessary evil. Everyone asks for them, but that shouldn't be your first contact point with anyone at a company. Like I would try to get someone to vouch for you, or a friend, like someone who's actually a friend of a friend that you can kind of talk to rather than like a cold email. Monica?
I would say the same. The thing about, I get a lot of also requests of people I've never met before asking me to hop on a video call with them. And that makes me a little uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I always prefer to answer them in text form because I can do it sort of asynchronously and think about my answers and then, sort of write them down. Versus if I'm on a call and it's someone I haven't met, there's a lot of pressure and I probably actually won't give you as good an answer because I have to give it to you right then. I don't have time to like noodle on it as much. I want to touch on this question that Angela wrote. How do you get over that freeze feeling when you don't know how to do something? Because this happens to me almost every day, or at least when I have a new project or a new technology that I have to work with that I haven't a lot. And my first thought is like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't do anything. And it gets into sort of like an analysis paralysis situation where the whole thing seems very overwhelming and you have no idea how you're going to get from here to finished product. And so just breaking the actual problem down into the smallest possible pieces. And this is something that I've definitely, like a muscle I've definitely had to work over and over again. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but we have some other like really experienced engineers on the team. And so I'll see the way that they approach problems. And we use an agile framework called JIRA, which is basically just how we break up our big projects into smaller tasks. And before the start of a project, engineers are supposed to create what's called like tickets for themselves. And I use that as an opportunity to sort of identify what are really, I don't want to have a ticket that will take me more than like a couple days at a time. So if I have one task that looks like it's a week's worth of work, then it needs to be broken down into smaller pieces. And then once you have all of those pieces, then it becomes much more manageable because you can just say like, okay, what makes the most sense to start with? Because usually you'll have, your tickets will kind of build on each other and they'll be related to each other. So you can't really tackle X until you've done this other portion of it first. And again, it's still something that I struggle with. Like I'm always going back and kind of, once I've gotten into it, like revising my tickets. Another thing that I am really a big advocate of, and this is pretty like engineering specific, but I do feel like it can translate to other disciplines too. Just really like, if it's not code, it depends on like what your medium is. But whenever we have a big technical project to work on, we'll do what's called like a spike, which is really, it shouldn't take more than a day, maybe half a day. And you're just writing like the dirtiest like MVP proof of concept that you can, just to see if your idea of how you're going to implement it will work. And if it does, then that's really like where you start creating the rest of your tickets, probably writing some documentation around it as well to get, I'm always looking for feedback and buy-in on the ideas that I'm proposing, because, it sounds great in my head, but the reason that we work on a team is because other people bring different experiences and they might have seen, something not work so well in the wild before, or have some other like really key feedback. And you always want to get that in the beginning, because I've also been in the situation where everything's great until you find a bug in your program at the last minute before you're going to release, and it basically means you have to rewrite the whole thing. So so I guess the two key points, because I feel like I've been talking for an hour now, are do like a quick and dirty like implementation or sketch or whatever it is first, just to kind of get the idea rolling. And then after that, take that and break it into more manageable pieces for how the polished version should look.
Thank you, Monica. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of stuff about performance reviews, and I really like your point, Omri, about like test anxiety and getting accommodations for like in interviews. If you have anxiety and you're maybe not as charismatic, or like you just are really nervous and can't be yourself, how debilitating that can be. But I'm pretty distracted, Monica, because we have our first hater in the comments and I'm cracking up, and I think he left. But if anyone saw this comment, I mean, I'm just dying of laughter because maybe this is the person that I didn't hire, saying that we're simple people in software engineering who don't know the simplest stuff about data structures and algorithms. And so this, ladies and gentlemen, is a beautiful illustration of why imposter syndrome plagues women, because there are some men, not all men, but there are some men. And I'm just guessing this is a man by the name Marco Shiva. I don't know, could be a woman, but someone like the intention to put the speakers of an event down, like so quickly put us down because I made a joke that I don't know what a linked list is. I mean, that's tough. We're ashamed for laughing about firing people who know more than you because he didn't want to talk to you.
It wasn't firing. It was not making a hire because they were only communicating with 50% of the interview panel.
Yeah. I mean,
crazy, but
agree to disagree on this one. And this kind of also brings up a great point of like, you are not going to gel with every company you interview or the people that work at those companies. Like there's a reason I've left previous jobs. You really need to get the culture right for who you are. And a lot of these interview questions have a lot to do with that. So like Omri, the test anxiety, this kind of sounds like dating. If you're interviewing at a place that you have this overwhelming anxiety and you cannot, like they are not helping put you at ease, and you just feel like you are not able to even get through that interview because you feel so uncomfortable and judged by the people in the interview, it's not the place for you. That's not somewhere you want to work, and you're never going to be able to learn from those people. The thing that I look for when I'm interviewing is like, do I feel comfortable with these people? Even though it's a super stressful situation, I'm not going to feel comfortable. I'm not going to like be chilled out, but like, do I feel like these people can give me feedback and I can take their feedback and not feel like a huge idiot? That's how I felt like in my first interviews. Interviewing is so much like dating. LOL. Yeah, totally. And so people like this who like want to put you down and want to use their years of experience or like their menial knowledge of data structures and algorithms that I never use in my job. Sorry, Marco. Like it, if you want to hold on to that and have a feather in your cap, then that's good. I would love to know where you work. But I'm sorry, you guys, I'm not usually this feisty, but this is our first hater. So Monica, we've made it when we get the hate comments. And maybe people listen to our podcast and say this quietly to themselves, but look, you guys, this is like who we are. We're joking and we're like downplaying our own achievements, but the reality is that we're really successful engineers that work at a great company. So, we know what we're talking about, even though we don't feel like always feel the most confident and our best. Okay, that's my rant. Do you want to talk about performance interviews, Monica, or performance reviews?
Performance reviews.
People are saying like, how do you not let imposter syndrome make you rate yourself lower on performance reviews?
Oh, I think it does. Like, I think it definitely does. Like, I've never given myself, our scale is usually like 1 to 5. And I think I always like sprinkle some 4s in there to sort of keep myself in check. And then, like secretly hope that my manager gives me a 5. And he usually does. But I don't know. I like to think, also like keeping myself humble. There's nothing wrong with a 4. It's like a solid B. And also, I think it's also important to acknowledge that there's room for improvement. Like I also used to be like very, very afraid of performance reviews, always assuming the worst. It never went that way. There was, earlier in my career path where I was getting more feedback from people who were, saying that I should grow my technical muscle more. Whether that was just, because I was a woman or because I was like more junior at a time, I'll never know. But fortunately, we took that that piece out of our review framework anyway, which was nice. So now it's much more general, and I think it's always, you should never really be shocked by a performance review. If you are, then there's some serious miscommunication, I think, on your manager's behalf, and this is also why I get frustrated with these like annual or biannual performance review cycle, because I think you should always be getting feedback, because if someone has, feedback for you, constructive or congratulatory, that's always better delivered, within a certain time window, not 4 months after it happened. And especially with constructive criticism, I would get very frustrated if someone called me out on something that I had done in the previous quarter, but their excuse had been like, oh, well, it wasn't the review cycle. So I think, and I had a manager that did that to me once, although he was also blatantly just kind of like making stuff up, which was annoying for other reasons. But I gave him that feedback in person, because my sort of like self-doubt and imposter syndrome was outweighed by just kind of the rage that I felt toward him for making these very sort of like vague, constructive criticisms on my feedback report, which is, it's like your personal record at your company, at least. So yeah, we had a conversation, and I basically asked him, where's the Slack conversations? Like, where's the documentation of all of these, claims that I didn't communicate something correctly, or, that I had misstepped somewhere. And, like, shocker, there was no documentation to back any of this up. So, oops.
Yeah, I mean, performance reviews are just, it's kind of your opportunity to, whatever you grade yourself, like, use it as an opportunity to compile, like be compiling over time lists of things that you've done amazing or things you've gotten accolades for, and just dump it all there and like show, like, here are the things that I've done, what I rate myself or not. Like, these are the things I've done. You can't argue with that. And in reviews, people are just looking for you, again, to be self-aware, to be reflective. And yeah, I would say, like, if you have an instinct, if you have a hunch that you're maybe grading yourself lower, grade yourself like a bump higher, like test it out. I've graded myself high, and my manager's been like, okay, I think you're actually here. And I'm like, okay, you're right. They're not going to say, wow, like, Taylor, you are way off.
You're fired for thinking that you're better than you are.
Exactly. So yeah. And yeah, exactly what Monica was saying. It shouldn't be the only time you're having that conversation with your manager about where you stand. You should have those hopefully like monthly or biweekly, and you should know. So it shouldn't be like this once a year time where you're having to evaluate. You should have like a pretty good idea, and you should be on the same page. And yeah, maybe ask for more meetings with your manager if you're not getting that. Or you can ask your peers for feedback too. That's always an option. Or someone that you work with really closely on your team. Maybe that works on your same platform. I have mentors on the iOS team that I'll ask for feedback or they'll give it to me. And that's really helpful too, because they are really seeing your technical skills like day to day. Let's see. Okay. I see stuff about building like some rep on Stack Overflow, GitHub, and just like how, like getting that first job, like how do you, feeling like you don't know enough to get the first job. And guess what? You're going to feel like, I don't know, if you're anything like us, you're going to feel like you don't know enough to get your first and your second job. But it's, so you kind of have to get over it and again, focus on the place. Like, is this a place where that cares about learning and like is going to kind of take me in and help me learn? Or, I mean, you could spend maybe a year like building your own app and getting it on the App Store. That's another option that some people do. That's not for me. I'm not someone that can just independently work and get kind of learn that way. I knew I needed to learn from a mentor, which is why I took an internship. And so if you're feeling pressure of like, I need to get that like first 6-figure job and you don't feel ready, then maybe you're not ready for that job. And you can take a lower paying job or a more junior developer job where you're really going to learn and like learn really fast, much faster than you can learn on your own. So I wouldn't like stop yourself feeling like you don't know enough and just kind of stay stuck in that place of like, I need to teach myself more. Because you probably don't even know what you don't know until you interact with those things on the job. So personally for me, I'm not someone who's like working on a side project app to teach myself. Like I learn on the job. That's how I learn. And, yeah, I mean, I've never answered a question on Stack Overflow. I've come close. I've been like, I could answer that. And then I haven't. Monica, have you answered anything?
No. So like all of these like extracurricular things, I'm like, Taylor, I learn on the job. Even if there's a new technology that I'm interested in, I'm going to branch off of our existing code base and like build a feature. Like I was talking about with Spikes, I'm going to build it on our existing production scale app because it already has all of this infrastructure set up. I know the architecture pattern, like everything's in. And so I can just kind of test this one thing. I want to see how it works in isolation without having to set up a build environment, which like I'm so exhausted by the time I set up a new build environment that I'm never going to finish that project anyway. And same with like answering things on Stack Overflow, and you have to build up your reputation. And I think before you can even answer someone's question, you have to, I don't know, like upvote or downvote. There's a certain, like you earn points and that's just, it's so much cognitive overload for me. You know, like I have a life, there's other things I like to do besides code. And so that's just not really for me. And we've already both shared, you know, we're getting messaged by recruiters constantly throughout the week at really, really like great companies. And they, you know, they're not asking us what our rank on Stack Overflow is or what side projects you're working on. I think if you're very junior, like those things can help you, but I don't think that it's a blocker from getting a job. I think, like Taylor said, if you want to focus on that and building up your reputation by doing your own sort of projects and contributing to the community or contributing to an open source project, that's one way to go. But I think another and like very viable way to go is to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and start interviewing. And the way that I would approach it is find random companies, like find companies, jobs that you're really not interested in, just so that you can start building that muscle. Like it's annoying because software engineering interviews, I think, are so disconnected usually from the job that you're actually going to be doing. So you just have to practice. Like you just have to do a bunch of interviews and kind of learn more about what sort of questions that they're going to ask. And eventually you'll start to see these sort of patterns in like the data structure algorithm questions or like the system design questions, which I think is an even smaller pool. And then, you know, by the time that you start building up your confidence in interviews, then maybe it's time to start lining up interviews at the companies that you actually want to work at.
Such a great point. And I would funnel my energy into the networking rather than the side projects answering questions. Because that is going to pay off. And guess what? If you interview somewhere that, even if it's your dream company and you don't get it, you still have, and if you have great communication skills and like you show passion, but maybe you're not there technically, you've just built a connection with that person, that recruiter, maybe that engineering manager, and you can use that. It's not what you want to hear at the time, but those are the connections that are going to be really valuable later on. Okay, I'm looking at other questions that we missed. Okay, I like this one. Do you feel like as a woman, you need to come to an interview prepared a level of like 150% to be able to stand out more against more experienced candidates? Yes. Yes, but on the other hand, I think because there are so few women, like you are noticed. You are not the cookie cutter mold of who's coming in, of who's normally coming in for an interview. So you're noticed. It's not like once you're in the door, especially. And guess what? Companies want to hire more women. I've had recruiters like specifically say that to me in emails. I talked to a woman at Netflix who literally said, we want more women. A lot of women enter the workforce. They enter the workforce and then they get pregnant and then they leave engineering. And that's why there aren't that many of them. So we're trying to get more. We have a female engineering manager. So literally said that to me. I was like, wow. Okay. Men, you're going to be okay. Like there are still jobs for you, but for women, a lot of companies are trying to balance the scales because they really don't have that many female engineers. Monica and I we basically have one woman on each engineering team at Headspace. So we're probably operating like under 10% of the whole engineering org are women. And that's the most I've ever been around. So yes, I do feel like I need to really prove myself. But like once you're in the door, just take it, just forget the fact that you're a woman, whatever. And like use that as your opportunity. Like do not take that opportunity for granted. And I think everyone feels this way going in an interview, like you need to be your absolute best. And that's kind of where some of the stress comes from. But I really feel like if you're yourself, like I've definitely interviewed people that I can tell they're nervous. But if I'm able to guide them and like communicate with them and figure out like where the breakdown's happening and feel like I can work with that person, it's going to still speak volumes. It doesn't have to be a perfect interview where you go up to the whiteboard and go, done. So yeah, I know interviews are terrible. They suck. Like there's nothing to say about it.
Melissa, you asked, do you feel the need to periodically do interviews even when you have a job just in case? I feel like I should be, but I don't. So like, yes, I feel the need, but no, I don't do it. Interviews. I have a really good friend who is always interviewing, and she has moved roles a lot of times, and it's worked out really well for her. And so she definitely like flexes that interview muscle a lot. And I know when a couple years ago when she was looking to leave her current role and gearing up for interviews, I know she was kind of heads down in cracking the coding interview for like 2 or 3 hours every night after work, just because she wanted to go to one of, I think like a Facebook, Amazon, Google level where they are very, very much asking those sort of like medium hard level data structure algorithm questions. So she knew that was a muscle she really need to strengthen and flex. So I know that's definitely like common. For me, I feel like a little bit of pressure, mainly because I know people are doing it. But like I said before, like I've been at Headspace for 5 years, and I started out as an intern, and now I'm senior engineer, and I'm a co-chapter lead of the Android team. I've sort of built up a good reputation for myself, which I've worked really hard to do so, and I treasure that. I feel like it holds a lot of value, especially as a woman in the tech industry. It's not so easy to do that. And I really like my coworkers, and I have a lot of technical influence at this point, just because of the value that I've added over the past few years. And so that alone sort of like keeps me engaged, and, I don't know if something could change tomorrow, but as of right now, I just don't feel the need to be like looking around.
Yeah, I'd say I take calls once in a while if it's from a good company that I want to network with, but I usually won't go past like the initial conversation. Like I'll talk to the person, make that connection, hold on to it in my back pocket for later when I actually want to leave, and be transparent about that. But I usually won't do a technical interview just to practice. Cause like Monica said, I mean, that's kind of torturous. Like why do that for yourself? But you really want to, like, if you're interviewing, you want to be in that headspace. And if you're not studying, like you're not going to do that well. So why do that to yourself? And then, make yourself feel bad. There's a question about women being more supportive of other women in the industry. Do we find that women are more supportive of other women in the industry, or are males more likely to be supportive mentors? I think I've seen both. There are definitely women that there's going to be competition, right? Whenever there's like a scarcity mindset of like, there aren't that many jobs, there aren't that many women, only certain women are getting the job, then that's like a natural feeling of like, oh, like that woman is, hired for that position. Like they're the token woman on the team. But I've found that like the women that are more real with me, like we're having real conversations about imposter syndrome, like me and Monica, those are the ones that I can really vibe with and get the support from. If I talk to a woman in engineering that's like, I feel like is trying to like one up me or prove how much technical knowledge they have, I'm like, no, thanks. Like I don't need that energy around me. I found a lot of really supportive men, but then some not supportive men. So it just really like, I don't think it's a black and white answer on that one. You just kind of have to feel out who you feel comfortable with and who you feel like you can feel like you're stupid around, or on the other hand, feel like you're really smart around, and who like builds you up. Okay. Like I know we have 1 minute, so I don't know when we get cut off, Ashley, but there are so many questions. You guys are so engaged. Ashley, what do we do here?
You're definitely welcome to continue on. It's your time, your podcast. So I'm not going to stop you.
Okay. Let me just scan a couple more. Okay. I don't know if this answered. How do you feel about applying for jobs? Okay. Look at all the requirements. And I feel like I don't have all the skills. Yeah, don't worry about that. Again, like I ignore the details of the job posting. And actually, when I got hired at Headspace, it was for a senior role. Like the role posted was senior engineer, and I only had 2 years of experience. I was not at that level, but I networked through a mentor of mine. A mentor of mine got that recruiting email from Headspace and then passed it on to me. And so I was able to directly contact that recruiter and be like, hey, I'm interested. She brought me in because she was interested by my story. It's different, shows like a passion for learning. And so they still brought me in for the interview, even though I was not qualified at all. Like that posting was probably for 5+ years of experience. And they ended up just making a position for me. Like they didn't hire me into that position, but they just hired me at a lower position. So that'll happen sometimes. If you get in and they really, really like you, but maybe you're not a senior, they'll just hire you as a junior or, a different level. So don't let that stop you. Yeah. Apply anyway. Exactly. Supportive have you found the general environment of a tech? Okay. How supportive have you found the general environment of a tech workplace? It really depends on the company. It really, really depends. Like, and again, you're going to feel that in the interview. If you feel like, oh, this would be a great person to learn from based on the feedback he gave me. I say he, cause it's a lot of men, he or she gave me, then maybe and if you really identify with the mission. I think for both Monica and I, the mission is really important, and companies that have a stronger mission, oftentimes are a stronger mission that maybe is more in line with helping people and, doing some kind of greater good. That environment in general will be better because people that want to work at that company are also kind of trying to do something for the greater good. So, not always, but But that's something, again, like you really want to feel out in the interview and ask about how supportive people are. And if people are, asked to work on weekends and like really like, are they killing themselves to get the job done? Or is it, a place that values work-life balance? That's something that really has to be there for me personally.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about the recording of the podcast. So we're going to hopefully record the audio session and release it next week on our podcast, and then we will also the video recording is going to be available on the Codesmith YouTube, which will also include a link to when we release our podcast. So there'll be multiple ways to relive this experience.
And we have about 13 podcasts out, Monica, and we have a guest.
We just released the 13th, yeah.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of guests. So, don't just take it from us. You can also listen to our guests. We've had mostly women. We've had one man, and that's a really fun one. But yeah, like you can hear from a lot of different women that experience this at all stages in their career. And they have there's a lot of good advice on there. We have negotiation episodes. We haven't done one specifically about interviewing. And so this is kind of like great.
I really want to though, because honestly, like I need to learn from that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there from mentoring and leading teams, maybe being more introverted. So everything, there's something for everyone on there. And thank you. I'm sorry we didn't hear your voices, but like thank you for you guys wrote so much in the chat that we didn't even need to like ask the group to talk. But there's so much stuff in here. You can always plug for our Instagram, which is really embarrassing. Like I am not a content creator. So like if anyone is, let me know and give me some tips. It's pretty bad. But you can follow us on there. I'll type it in the chat, but you can DM us there and we can answer you. And yeah, that's a great place to find us. And we're always happy to help. Like the reason that we talk in the way that we do and kind of like the less technical stuff is because we want more people to feel like this is an accessible career for them and that you don't have all these barriers to entry. Like you need to have this perfect resume and perfect technical interview. Like you really don't. And you can still learn all these skills. So don't forget that.
Yeah, I know we did probably miss quite a few questions in the chat because they were coming in so quickly. So if your question was not answered, please DM it to us because we absolutely would love to do another sort of AMA episode on the podcast and dive in deeper because these were all such great questions and I feel like we covered so much, but I feel like there's also so much more that we didn't get to. And so if we could do, round 2 of this, that would be awesome.
So you're saying if someone wanted to reach out to you, the best thing to do would be to just DM you via the Instagram channel?
Yes, that would be amazing.
Okay.
And impostHER pod.